2 down and 2 to go to get us to a full dance card at the 2023 Women's Final Four in Dallas, Texas. What happened and what's ahead? We're going to break it all down, and it starts right now.
Ogunbowale for the win.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball.
Happy Monday, friends. It is March 27th, 2023. I am Missy Heidrick, National Women's Basketball Correspondent here at The Next. Thank you for making Locked On Women's Basketball your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. That's prizepicks.com, promo code Locked On. Well, you can follow me on Twitter at Missy Heidrick, and be sure to follow The Next Hoops at The Next Hoops. Follow this podcast at Locked On WBB, and get yourself over to the website, www.thenexthoops.com. We have you covered everywhere across the country. All right, we knew that the road to the Final Four was going to be bumpy. There were going to be lots of ups and downs, some upsets, some big wins, some buzzer beaters, teams taking their claim to over the 4 coveted spots on the biggest stage in women's college basketball. There will be no UConn, no Stanford, no Tennessee this year in Dallas, the blue bloods, or so we like to say, of the women's game. But we have 2 teams in and 2 more to go. Today, we're going to break down the wins by LSU and Iowa to get in, which players have impressed us over the course of the last week, and what to expect from the 2 other Elite 8 matchups tonight: Maryland versus South Carolina and Ohio State versus Virginia Tech. Well, here to break it all down with me today is one of the outstanding journalists who has been on site, and he is live from the Seattle 3 and 4 regionals, Matthew Walter. Matthew, hello, my friend. It is so good to see you up and early, and you have had your fill of basketball over the last couple weeks. I want to start with the first. We're going to do this sequentially just so we stay in order. We're going to start with the first Elite 8 game that happened yesterday, the Miami LSU game in the, I guess that was the Greenville 2 regional. I want to make sure I get them correct, that everyone has been, they've been all classified correctly. Greenville 2, Miami, and LSU. It was not the offensive juggernaut that I think a lot of people thought it would be. But your first takes in looking at that game, knowing that LSU is getting themselves back to the Final Four, first trip since 2008, what struck you and what stood out for you in watching that matchup?
I think it's Kim Mulkey is one of the best coaches in our game. She may be one of the most interestingly dressed coaches in our game, but she's one of the best. To, in her second season at LSU, to take them to the Final Four. Now, I understand, right? There wasn't 1 seed Indiana, and the path was a little different than people probably expected for her team. But at the same time, like, Miami proved that they deserve to be in that Elite 8 with the teams that they beat, and LSU showed that, yes, they're an offensive team. They can win on defense. They can win by, win in different ways. And that's what you have to do in the tournament, right? You can't just win only playing offense or only being a defensive team. You have to sort of play both sides of the ball. And LSU showed that. And, Angel Reese is clearly one of the stars of our game. And she talked about it after the game, how much she didn't think that, a year ago when she left Maryland, like, this would be what they'd be doing. But you look at them now, and just what Kim Mulkey has done in a short period of time since coming to LSU is really it's so outstanding, because normally you can't do that. LSU had been a tournament team. They'd been consistently getting the NCAA tournament, but to get to the Final Four in 2 seasons as a head coach, it just shows that she is one of the, best coaches in our game. And to take a group of kids with a lot of transfers, with a lot of faces that are brand new to her, right, because she's only in her second season, is just so impressive. And I also want to just give a ton of credit to Miami and Katie Meyer. And as someone who's an alumni of Miami and worked with that program, just how long it finally took her to get to the Elite 8, but with this group of players, right, with the Cavender twins that were brand new, Destiny Harden, who transferred in a couple of seasons ago, just they did it with their defense, and they hit some big shots, and they just played so confident the whole tournament, coming back to beat Oklahoma State, leading wire to wire against Indiana, losing the big lead to Villanova and making the comeback. But in that game, it was LSU, and just the Kim Mulkey showed, like, I've been here before. I know how to do this. And I think that coaching experience is what got them over the hump against Miami in that game and getting them back to the Final Four.
I would have to 100% agree with you. I think a couple of the buzzwords that you hear and have been part of the conversation all season about this LSU program is that they always went into this as a rebuilding process, that this was not going to be instantaneous, that she was telling her assistant coaches, we've got to be patient. This isn't going to happen overnight. However, when you can strike gold sometimes in the portal with a player like an Angel Reese, and then someone like Alexis Morris just comes on and has the year that she had this season, I feel like then it isn't necessarily about a team of destiny, but it's more about putting the pieces of the puzzle together at the right time. I'm with you. You give 100% credit to this Miami squad. I thought they, maybe out of everybody, have seemed very calm, cool, collected as they entered the NCAA tournament. Maybe a chip on their shoulder, knowing that they could have been one of the last teams in, but that they get in and played so well. It also strikes me that for a team like LSU, the second highest scoring team in the nation coming in, that they win this game 54-42. You said with defense, but I think when push came to shove, they were able to hit shots when Miami wasn't. And that really was the difference maker down the stretch.
Yeah, I mean, there was 1-3 in the game combined between the two teams, and I think it came late in the game.
Yeah.
But I also think, that's where you credit Miami and the job they've done. And multiple teams I've talked to in here, Seattle, because Louisville and Virginia Tech are here, have said that's a really good Miami team, right? The first time that they play people, you don't know what you're getting into, and so they can catch a lot of teams off guard. And that's what they did to Indiana, to Villanova, and against Oklahoma State. And so credit to LSU, you're right, for finding ways to make shots down the stretch when it counts and getting stops consistently throughout the game against Miami. And that goes back to coaching and preparation. And that's where I think, as much give credit to Kim Mulkey for having done that, been in these situations when she was at Baylor and knowing when it comes to the tournament, how to get your team to focus on the right important things in a game plan, in a short turnaround, to get themselves back to the Final Four. And they have so much talent. Angel Reese, Alexis Morris, Flau'jae Johnson. It's, when you have that much talent, you just have to get them to buy into what they're going to do in terms of a game plan on a game-to-game basis. And she knows how to do that, having all the experience of coaching Baylor to multiple, Final Four trips.
No, I think you're right. You do. You have to get buy-in. And I think that buy-in has come, and they've had great leadership in someone like Angel Reese. She has 13 points, but also 18 rebounds yesterday, sets the SEC single season record for double doubles. And that, those are the kind of things where it just takes one sometimes, and then a lot of other sort of the all boats rise to that level. I think when you've got a player that plays with such a high motor and someone who plays at a high level all the time, that's contagious. I think if you're Kim Mulkey, you know how fortunate you are to have that type, but they have bought in. All right, now let's go out east, we're going to go west. So we're going to leave Greenville. We're going to go out to where you are in Seattle. You saw the first of two Elite Eight finals yesterday, and that was the Louisville, Iowa game. Not only another record-setting performance, but just one heck of a show put on by Caitlin Clark, and this Iowa team will make their first trip to the Final Four since 1993. What did you see? What was that building like? And it was one heck of a battle between two really good teams.
So I'm just going to start with, it's Caitlin Clark's world, and we're all sort of living in it. And just to do the numbers, right? So she puts up a triple-double with 41, 10, and 12. She scores their first 7 points of the game. She scored or assisted on their first 30 points of the game. She ended up being responsible for 70 of their 97 points. Just some incredible statistics from one of the best players. And I hadn't gotten the chance until this weekend to watch her in person. And on TV, she looks good. But in person, she does some things that just don't show up well on film. And it's the passing. It's the things that she can do when she knows. There was a play yesterday when all 4 of the 5 players from Louisville had their eyes on her coming off a ball screen. And so she saw teammates open on the perimeter and threw a one-handed pass across the floor to a teammate for an open three. Just she sees things at such a high second level that you can see why she's such a talented player and why, so many people want to watch her. And you talked about the environment. There were over 11,000 people in this gym. Like, this city of Seattle really respects and understands its women's basketball. Yeah. And you could feel it yesterday. There were so many fans, both Louisville and Iowa fans in the building. And it was really an electric atmosphere, one of the best I've seen all year for a women's basketball game. And it really felt like an Elite Eight game. And Caitlin Clark put on a show, but that was an Iowa team that, they felt like this was finally their moment, right? This is a group of 5 starters who have started together now for 90 games. And so that's rare in this day and age of college basketball with the transfer portal to have 5 kids play 90 games together in a starting 5. And that's why Kate Martin and why Monica Cesano came back to Iowa for this moment, because they wanted to get to that Final Four after getting upset by Creighton a year ago, by losing in the Sweet 16, 2 years ago when we had the bubble tournament. And just credit to them, right? Louisville came out up 8-0 and they didn't flinch. They called a timeout, they reset, and they came back and they sort of took control there at the half, and then they dominated the third quarter with some points in transition. And that's what they can do, right? They can score in half a second because they get a rebound, Clark goes, and either she's going to score it in transition or she's going to find someone. And she had multiple of her assists were great passes in transition to someone going right, running rim to the basket. And that's just so much of what they can do. And even though Monica Cesano didn't have a great game, the others stepped up. McKenna Warnock had 17 points for them. And it's just the 5 of them all have the ability to put up double digits. Obviously, Clark is the star, but all 5 of them can easily score, 15 to 20 points in a given game just based on who's open. And they're so hard to guard because all 5 of them have that capability. But I want to give a ton of credit to Louisville.
Yes.
Jeff Walz is one of the best coaches in all of college basketball. They've gone to 5 straight Elite Eights, and I just don't think that gets talked about enough. And he talked about it. Like, we don't get talked about. A lot of people picked us to lose to Drake, and they did play Drake to a 2-point game. But this team has been there before. Yes, they struggled to be in the season just like Tennessee, but he knows how to get them to mesh and to get things going. And Haley Van Lith is one of the best players in our game, but I've been really impressed with Mikasa Robinson. Her defense, her speed on the ball, her ability to run their offense really is what sort of got them there. And you just saw how bought in they were by this tournament to get themselves back to an Elite Eight. And they were in the game for multiple points, and they even made a run to cut it to single digits late in the game before Iowa finally took control and pulled away with about a minute to go. But they never gave up. They just kept fighting, and he's done such a good job. And he's one of the best coaches at game planning and figuring out how we're going to get ourselves in the best position to win a game.
I agree with you. I had the pleasure of being able to see Louisville in person last year at the Wichita Regional, where they won and got themselves to the Final Four. I think, like you said, I think Jeff Walz is just one of the best X's and O's coaches in the country. He's also a great motivator. You look at this box score, and yes, they lose 97-83, but they've got 4 players that hit double figures. Olivia Cochran gives them 20, along with Van Lith and her 27. I also would say I saw Iowa in person in mid-November, and it wasn't one of their best outings. They actually lost at Kansas State, and it just didn't seem like this team was as connected maybe on the defensive end, but also on the offensive end, that they were looking to try. Maybe it was a little bit too much reliance on Caitlin Clark to make a play, to create for other people. But when I look at what they were able to do last night and how they've been playing in this tournament, again, it doesn't matter. You survive in advance. You win by 1 or 21. It doesn't matter. You're still moving on. So if that's the mentality, it seemed as though that there were multiple players ready to step into their role. And, Cesano doesn't have a great night. She's got 9 points, 5 boards. But you mentioned McKenna Warnock, and that's a player back in November that I was looking for more from for Iowa. Didn't really do much. But now all of a sudden getting this tournament seems to have found exactly what she's supposed to be in terms of a complement player. And that right there, I think, gives them a lot of tools in the toolbox as you head into the Final Four.
Yeah, and I think if I look back at both their games here in Seattle, right, the leading scorer in both was Caitlin Clark, but the second leading scorer and what the supporting cast around Clark and Cesano did was different, right? Today or yesterday, it was McKenna Warnock who had 17. I'm pretty sure 2 days ago it was Gabby Marshall, who was their second leading scorer. I think they had 4 in double figures against Colorado in the Sweet 16 game. So I think you're right. When the support and Louisville talked about it, the reason that they won was because the supporting cast stepped up and hit the shots that they forced them to hit by trying to say, like, Clark, you aren't going to beat us. We're going to make other people beat us. Now she had 41, but again, she was responsible for another 29 points off of her assists. So that means her teammates had to knock down shots. They had, of her 12 assists, 5 of them were to 3-pointers. So her teammates had to knock down 3-point shots. Other than Cesano, the other 4 starters shoot somewhere between 38, 36, and 40% from 3. Coming into this tournament, in the tournament play, Gabby Marshall is shooting exactly 50% from 3, 23 of 46. So just getting those others, the role players, the people that aren't Caitlin Clark and Monica Cesano, to hit shots and make big plays is what's going to continue, what carried Iowa to this Final Four, and what they're going to need to continue to do if they want to go for a national championship.
Absolutely. All right. When we come back, we've got to talk about some of the other players that we haven't mentioned that have made a splash, both in Seattle and in the Greenville regionals. It may feel like there are way too many to count, and that's sometimes how I think it really is. But we're going to talk about a few of them. But first, a message from our friends at Prize Picks. All right. So this is how it works. You pick 2 to 6 players, and if they will go score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 25 times your money on any entry. There's no competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available. Prize Picks offers projections on any sport that you watch. That includes college basketball, men's and women's, NBA, MLB, PGA, golf, the NHL, whatever it is. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy, safe, and fast withdrawals. Currently operational in over 30 states and Canada. So download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. If you deposit $100, Prize Picks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, Prize Picks will give you $50. Don't forget to enter the promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. Hi, everybody. I am Missy Heidrick, and thank you for making Locked On Women's Basketball your first listen today. I am joined by Matthew Walter, live from Seattle. He is there covering Seattle 3 and 4 regionals. All right. We've talked a little bit about these 2 games. We've got LSU and Iowa. They are advancing to the Final Four. 2 games that are coming up tonight, Monday, here, the 27th of March. We will talk about that in a little bit. But I also would be remiss, I think, Matthew, if we would think a little bit about some of the players that have been making a splash. And we think about the Sweet 16, and there were so many great performances that got these players and got these teams to that point. You're going to see a couple of them tonight. We'll talk about Virginia Tech and Ohio State in just a little bit. But as I think about a team like Miami and a team like Louisville, who had great supporting casts, a player like Maddie Segrest from Villanova, someone who is going to go down as one of the all-time best players, not only in the history of her school, of the Big East, but I think in women's basketball, based on what she's done, there's just been some outstanding performances over the last couple of weeks. And I don't think we are done yet with games that are happening tonight.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think, to a couple of those teams that made some surprise runs the Sweet 16, Destiny Harden, obviously the star for Miami, got the big shot against Indiana, hit some big shots. Haley Cavender has been huge for them. And then, Jasmine Roberts had that big performance against Villanova in the Sweet 16. And then someone like Ole Miss getting a big performance from Angel Baker to get them past Stanford to the Sweet 16. Markeisha Davis had a big game against Louisville. I talked about, we know Haley Van Lith, but Olivia Cochran has played really well in this tournament. Mikasa Robinson really impressed me with her defense and offense for the Cardinal. And, you said we're going to talk about Virginia Tech and Ohio State, but I mean, Georgia Amore has been playing out of her mind since the ACC tournament. And then I was so impressed with the freshman Cody McMahon from Ohio State, just the things that she did against UConn offensively to drive the lane to, Ohio State, we're talking about their press, but they're an offensive team. And I think sometimes that gets lost with how much they were able to turn UConn over, that they are a team that wants to score the ball. And McMahon played so well for them. And then, of course, in Maryland, Diamond Miller is one of the stars of that program. And Cheyenne Sellers has been playing so well for them. And then you look at that, people like Maddie Segrest, who just was an outstanding, one of the best all-time scorers in the history of college basketball. Just so many star performances across the board in the Sweet 16 and in the Elite Eight, and even just getting teams to the Sweet 16 for the first time in their program, in a long time or in their program history.
Now, you also had the chance because being there in Seattle, Virginia Tech advances. They're in the Elite Eight tonight, but they went up against a Tennessee squad who I kind of felt like was starting to find their groove once they hit the tournament. They hadn't lost a game other than their only losses over the course of the month of February and early March were to South Carolina twice. I mean, they were finding that groove after a bunch of injuries and all sorts of things that had happened. What do you think about those that are coming back? What did you see from Tennessee? And will this be a team or a program, as Kelly Harper looks at this, that is going to be able to get themselves over the hump and get to the Final Four soon?
I think so. I think, they were very much looked like they were out of the game early, and Virginia Tech was in control. And then they threw a press at Virginia Tech and they didn't handle it very well. And Tennessee got right back in the game, and they were down 1 point midway through the fourth quarter and just couldn't complete the comeback to take the lead. And, that's a lot of credit to the job that Kelly Harper has done, and credit to the players, right? They didn't give up. They didn't let it fall. Like they're like Louisville, right? They had that terrible, not great start to the season, and they bounced back, in a big way. And they played much better down the stretch. And you saw that in that game, right? They could have easily folded, but they didn't. And Kelly Harper talked about after the game, there were so many players that she knows, so many teams she knows, that with the way they started and how the season went, that they would have just folded midway through, but they bounced back. And I think the players that come back, and obviously there are some players that have to decide, are they going to go to the WNBA draft? Are they going to come back and use their fifth year? Those players that do come back are going to use this experience. And I think it's only going to make Tennessee better. And I think they will have gained so much experience and so much, just like pride and belief that hey, we were able to bounce back and play so much better down the stretch. We beat LSU in the conference tournament. We got to the Sweet 16. Just they have a chance now to really show this is, we're back. We're bringing Tennessee back to the next level. And it's just going to take more consistent play like they had down the stretch and sort of starting off on the right foot to get themselves in a better position.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, it was such a tough start to the season, and that's a lot of new faces, and that is what we're seeing in college basketball now. I mean, all over the place, new faces coming into these programs year after year with the portal. And it does take a little bit of time. And then if you add an injury or other things that are going on off the court, and all of that creates sort of a swell that you got to be able to manage it. And I think it took maybe a little bit longer than most people had thought for a team like Tennessee to manage it, to kind of manage everything that was going on and put it back together and focus where they're at. I think we're going to see that more and more across college basketball. The one term that we hear people talk about all the time now is parity. It is becoming a reality in women's basketball. And the fact that you don't have UConn, you don't have Stanford, you don't have Tennessee headed to the Final Four in this world of where we want to equate basketball, college basketball, with blue bloods. I kind of say, you know what? It's okay. It's a good thing. We need to be able to do that. Look at what's happening in the men's Final Four. Look at there's 3 teams that have never been there ever that will make their first time appearance on the men's side. I think that's pretty awesome. I think that's what makes college basketball what it is. And the players are part of that.
And you're right, because we're even seeing it right now. Like you said, LSU hasn't been since 2008. Iowa hasn't been since 1993. Yeah. If Virginia Tech wins, they've never been to the Final Four.
Right.
South Carolina really is the only team remaining that has been to the Final Four at all in the last sort of 5 to 10 years. Mm-hmm. And Maryland is not a team that's just going to roll over and let South Carolina beat them. They're a very good team coached by a very good coach. So I think it's been talked about a lot at both regionals, just how much parity exists in our game and how good it is for the game. And I think, you could see 2 SEC teams, an ACC and a Big Ten team, but you could also see 3 Big Ten teams and an SEC team. It's just so balanced. There's so many teams that could win the games and go to the Final Four. And I just think it's so good for our game. And this is what this March Madness has really been the definition of madness, right? We've seen so many upsets, and it only is going to make the game better. And the more that we can put eyes on the game, giving more people a chance to see the quality of players, is just going to make more and more people invested, and it's going to make it better.
I 100% agree with you. Okay, you mentioned some of those teams, and we still have 2 regional finals that are on the docket tonight. One in Seattle with Matthew, the other in Greenville. Who is going to join LSU and Iowa? We are going to talk about it in just a moment. But first, a message from our friends at Built Bar. So I don't know if you've heard, the Built Bar March Madness bracket is here. You know you have a favorite bar or puff, and now it's your time to make it count. You can go to builtmarchmadness.com to vote for your favorites. And then whoever you vote for, if you also want to vote for a team, say you want to vote for LSU or for Iowa to win, then you'll be voting for that bar too. Support your team, support your favorite bar or puff. And when you vote for your favorite bar or puff, you'll be entered into a drawing with where over 50 lucky Locked On listeners will get a free box of Built. Not only that, but one Locked On fan will win a 12-month subscription to Built to have Built's best bars or puff delivered monthly straight to your door. You got to try Built. It's the best protein bar ever. Seriously, they're amazing, and you won't even think they're actually good for you. What makes them so good? Well, they're all high in protein, low in sugar, and covered in real chocolate. That's right, real chocolate. And that sounds really good right now. So run to builtmarchmadness.com right now to vote for your favorite bar or puff, or pick up a box while you're there. You can vote every day in March, so hop in and support your pick. Hi, everyone. It's Missy Heidrick here at The Next. And then I'm joined by Matthew Walter, who is live from Seattle. He is there for now the second regional final that will be happening tonight. It is Monday, March 27th. All right, let's talk about, we're going to go in sequential order again. So we're going to do this as we did before. Let's talk about the first one, which is going to be the matchup of South Carolina and Maryland. All right, a couple numbers to throw out at you. You've got a South Carolina team averaging 80.4 points per game. They give up just over 50.4. It's just under 51, 50.4 per game given up on the season. You've got Maryland. They score about 79 a game, and they give up about 68 on the year. We know this is about matchups, and when you look at the two on paper, I think that there's some similarity in where you can find some of those matchups, but it seems to me that the depth and the quality of what South Carolina brings to the fore, I just don't know if Maryland will have enough tonight to be able to knock them off.
I would agree. And the question is Maryland going to be able to score enough? I think that's really where you look at it, right? South Carolina, they score about the same, but South Carolina's defense is so good with the length. South Carolina has length at every single position. The fact that Camila Cardoso, who is 6'7", comes off the bench for South Carolina, it's length on length on length. And Diamond Miller is one of the best players in this country. Cheyenne Sellers is very good. Abby Myers is very good. But are they going to be able to score enough to beat South Carolina because of the fact that South Carolina's defense is so stout? Obviously, everybody knows it's Aaliyah Boston, it's Bree Beal, it's Letitia Mehier. Those are the players that make South Carolina go, and they're going to find their way to score. But South Carolina hasn't been their best offensive team in this tournament, right? They didn't score a ton against Norfolk State. They struggled at some points against South Florida. They didn't put up a ton of points against UCLA, but their defense has sort of been their calling card the last couple of years, and especially in this tournament. So will Maryland's offense be able to do enough with the star power that they have to put points in, on the board and keep it close to the end of the game? Because I think if you can keep it close to the last 5 minutes, you have a shot. But the question is, are they going to be able to keep up with South Carolina in terms of putting points on the board and limiting them enough to where they're in the game in the last 5 minutes and maybe somebody does something spectacular? That remains to be seen. They have the offensive weapons to do it, but it's easier said than done against the Gamecocks.
Oh, absolutely. And now keep in mind, this will be the second time that these two teams matched up. They actually played each other in what was the second game of the season back in November 11th, 2022. It was an 81-56 win by South Carolina. Only one player for the Maryland Terrapins hit double figures, and that was Abby Myers. She had 21 points. I think she's been incredibly solid all season for Brenda Freese's team. And Brenda Freese, also known as one of the great X's and O's coaches, I think, in the league too. I think there'll be a game plan. There's going to be opportunity for them to think, can we get some isolations for Diamond Miller? Where can we move Abby Myers, get her some movement, whether it's false action on one side of the floor, to be able to force South Carolina? But it is the length, it's the size, the speed, the athleticism on the defensive end that just makes South Carolina so good. And if somebody gets in foul trouble, you've got other people you can bring in. Dawn Staley's looking at, a bunch of McDonald's All-Americans down her bench. That's got to be a pretty good feeling when you're in another Elite Eight, if I'm her.
Yeah, and the other thing I would say is Maryland is that team, right? They lost a ton of transfers. For that early November game, they're not the same team now, right?
Yes.
you start to sort of gel better as the season goes on. And so much has been made about they lost all this talent. Well, they're still a number 2 seed. They're still in the Elite Eight. You're right. Brenda Frese is one of the best coaches. And I think when you play South Carolina, they score so much inside the 3-point line. You need to try to match that by making outside shots.
Yeah.
That's where Abby Myers is a big factor, right? You need to be able to knock down some threes because South Carolina gets so much of their offense inside the 3-point line because they're so efficient around the basket. Can you match that by getting that extra point by knocking down some outside shots? And that's what I think it'll be one of the keys is how many points can Maryland get beyond the arc? And if that's somewhere where they can get, 6 to 8, maybe close to 10 threes, they're going to give themselves a shot because they're able to knock down the outside shot, space out that South Carolina defense, and maybe create driving lanes, or if nothing else, knock down perimeter shots to match, South Carolina's ability to score in the paint.
And it's kind of simple. And I know it sounds maybe cliche, but I think this time of year when you can get stops and make shots, it makes basketball pretty darn simple. So let's take that equation to the game that you will see tonight in person out there in Seattle. The Seattle 3 regional final, as we keep them all in their correct classification. This is going to be the number 1 seed in Virginia Tech versus the number 3 seed in this regional, Ohio State. Now, I have been a fan from the start of this Virginia Tech squad. I was really bullish on like a lot of ACT teams this season. I've always liked Notre Dame. I thought obviously when Olivia Miles goes down, that changed things. I think they probably could have been an Elite Eight, even a Final Four squad with her in there. But the job that Kenny Brooks has done and what Virginia Tech and their consistency all season, to me, just stands out in a feel-good story, but also this is a really good basketball team that he has. They've won, I believe it's 14 in a row. And you just can't manufacture that by a whim. It takes a lot of work, and it really helps when you've got really good players.
Yeah, I think the number 1 storyline to watch in this game is Virginia Tech versus the Ohio State press. Virginia Tech struggles against press. They struggled against Tennessee's press. They struggled at times with Louisville's press in the ACC championship game. Can they handle it? Can they limit live ball turnovers? Because Kenny Brooks said dead ball turnovers are okay. It's going to happen. Yeah. And then we can go back and set our defense.
Yes.
But live ball turnovers are what are going to kill us. And so can they get enough, limit their live ball turnovers? And then, they're going to score. Elizabeth Kitley is a great scorer. Georgia Amore has been playing otherworldly in this postseason. So impressed. Taylor Soule is very, very good. Kayla King, very good. They have 6 really good players. Once they get into their half-court offense, they have the ability to score because of they have so much versatility on offense. Right. But it's going to be getting the ball into the front court and setting themselves up. For Ohio State, can they get turnovers? And then they're a high-scoring team. Can J.C. Sheldon, Taylor Mikesell, and Cody McMahon continue to put points on the board like they did against UConn? They got a lot of live ball turnovers. They pushed the pace. But then can they handle inside against Elizabeth Kitley? Can they guard her 6'6" size and her ability to space away from the basket and hit that mid-range jumper, hit that turnaround jump shot? And then can they stop Georgia Amore, whose three-point shooting has just been outstanding in this tournament? And obviously, Ohio State's going to score. They have scorers. That's what they do. So it's going to be interesting. Can they get some live ball turnovers, get some easy baskets, and then get stops against this very efficient Virginia Tech offense?
Yeah, when you look at the numbers, you're talking about an Ohio State team, as you said, they're averaging about 80 a game on the year, but they cause about 20 plus turnovers. So that's a plus 6.5 turnover margin. And for Virginia Tech, they take care of the basketball. They're only averaging about 13.3 turnovers a game, but you've got to be able to manage the pressure, and that you've got to be able to get that ball into the front court so you can get set in your offense. One question for you, as you've watched this team, I noticed there was the time frame when Virginia Tech, Kitley picked up, I believe, a second foul in that first half against Tennessee. She had to spend some time on the bench. Obviously, they were getting great scoring from Amore and from others stepping up. But if you were going to think about a matchup of who you would put on Elizabeth Kitley to maybe think about not only forcing her possibly into a couple offensive fouls, maybe an over the back or something like that, but also how do you attack her on the other end of the floor? Who are they going to look at for a matchup if you are Kevin McGuff in Ohio State and say, hey, we know if we can neutralize Kitley, that really changes things of what Virginia Tech can do?
Yeah, it's tough because Ohio State is not a big team, right? They don't have a lot of size. That's part of the reason they press so much is they're really athletic. They're very quick. They're not a big team. So I think, can you put, depending on who she's guarding, can you get her in a pick and roll and see if you can get a switch or
Yeah.
see if, depending on the way they're going to play, because Mike Sell and JC Sheldon can shoot that outside ball so well off of ball screens. Can you get her in a drop coverage? And so you're coming off a screen and shooting a three. Can you get her in a screen with Cody McMahon where McMahon can drive downhill and be aggressive to the basket and see if she fouls her? Obviously, Kitley's length is so good. And I think also, can you bother her by making her have to play in the full court press, having to come get the ball at half court and then run back and set up an offense where she's having to run up and down the floor more instead of just running down and standing there waiting for her teammates to bring the ball up the floor. So I think, she has seen a lot of things, but this is a press that's different than they've seen in the ACC.
Yeah.
They talked about the ACC doesn't have the way that Ohio State presses in it. And I asked the Ohio State players, how do you guys know? And they said, sometimes even it can't be shouted because we don't know. Sometimes we just see things on instincts and we go.
Yeah.
And that's where I think it's difficult to sort of prepare sometimes for this press, is because they don't even know how they're going to attack it. They're just going to sort of play out there like dogs and figure out, okay, where's the ball? Where do I sniff danger? And where can I go get it? Mm-hmm. And you saw that against UConn, and that's why they were able to take UConn down. It was because they were able to force those live ball turnovers. And UConn, a team that doesn't look flustered, looked flustered almost from the second quarter onward.
Yeah. Well, a very wise man once told me patience is a virtue. So I would say if you're going to be able to handle this kind of pressure, you got to have a little bit of patience when that ball comes inbounds and wait to see, find the gaps, get it up the floor, and then get yourself into offense, where this has been an incredibly efficient and really good Virginia Tech team. All right. You're going to be there in person tonight in Seattle. So do you have a prediction, my friend?
That's really tough. I been so impressed with Virginia Tech. The way that they handled Tennessee, it seemed like until Tennessee threw that press, they were in complete control. So that's where I say, if Virginia Tech limits their turnovers, I would say under, 18 to 15, they'll win the game. If it gets north of 20, then I think Ohio State with their press, especially it depends if they're a bunch of live ball turnovers, I think Virginia Tech's really going to struggle. I lean Virginia Tech, but it's a game I really see as a coin flip, just based off of, can Virginia Tech handle this pressure? And then can Ohio State force some live ball turnovers and get some easy transition baskets?
All right. Well, as we look at the brackets, as we said, we've got 2 in. So the South Carolina, Maryland winner will play Iowa in the Final Four. And then the winner of this Virginia Tech, Ohio State matchup, they are going to get LSU. There's going to be a lot of great basketball played tonight. Everybody tune in. Check your local listings, ESPN. That is where the games will be found. All right, Matthew, thank you so much. I know it's early out in Seattle, but you are amazing. Tell everybody where they can find you over the next couple days.
So on Twitter, I'm at Matthew Walter 96. I think I'll be taking over the Next Hoops account tonight for Virginia Tech and Ohio State. So follow along there at the Next Hoops. I should have a piece coming out later today about the 5 starters from Iowa and just what their journey has been like to get them back to the Final Four and playing 90 games together. And something I do want to mention, Jan Jensen, the associate head coach at Iowa, her father did pass away yesterday morning. So them playing for her yesterday and just what it meant for them, 90th game, playing for their associate head coach and getting back to the Final Four. So that'll be on the Next Hoops, and continue to follow along. We have great coverage both here in Seattle and in Greenville. Just some incredible stuff we're doing at the Next.
Yes, absolutely. We've got you covered. Everything you need to know, not only about these 2 regionals, but then, oh, by the way, it is Final Four week next week. So all sorts of great things are going to be coming your way. All right, Matthew, thank you so much. Have an awesome, awesome day, and keep Seattle alive, my friend. You can follow me, everyone, Missy Heidrick, at Missy Heidrick on Twitter. Make sure you get over to the Next, www.thenexthoops.com. That's where everything is. Join me here next week, because we will have the 2023 National Championship and National Champion to talk about in depth, but also come back all this week for more college basketball breakdown, international basketball news and notes. The WNBA is getting ready. We'll have the draft right around the corner. We have you covered. Thanks for making Locked On Women's Basketball your first listen today. Now, make your second listen Game to Game NBA. Every moment, every top performance, every result. Locked On Game to Game NBA covers every game from across your local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. Follow Game to Game NBA on the Locked On Network, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Matthew's alma mater, the Miami Hurricanes, headed to the Final Four for the first time, along with Florida Atlantic, San Diego State. All three teams that have never been to the men's Final Four, they are headed there. They join UConn. They will be in Houston. 2 teams in for the women's in Dallas, 2 more headed there tonight. It's going to be a great week of college basketball. Thank you, everybody. We will see you next time right here on Locked On Women's Basketball.